So what is left for China to have, or the Chinese tech tree, right? What is left on the aircraft for closer to top tier ranks for us to actually have in that tech tree? I already did a video talking about multiple nations, in multiple videos actually, talking about what is left for many nations, and now I wanted to do one for China, so let's get into it. Of course, I will list some vehicles here. Not gonna get too much into it. The objective is to kind of remind ourselves what to expect in the future. And of course, at the end of the video, I will do some honorable mentions of stuff that can be added, but it will take a little bit more time, or for some reason, it will not come for now, for example, okay? So we start off with the Taiwanese, their own design of a 4th generation jet, the FCK1. I already talked about this vehicle, during the week, but basically it is what the Taiwanese did for a 4th generation jet. So in a general sense, it feels like an F-16 mixed with an F-18 and an F-5, right? The vehicle, it is pretty interesting. I don't think it will be the fastest thing ever in acceleration and climb, but it does have a pretty good max speed of around Mach 1.8 and a thrust to weight of 1.0. It can use, of course, a pulse Doppler radar, and of course, the Skysword missiles, which is an IR and then a Fox 3 missile, the 1 and 2, right? Domestically built versions of these missiles, right? Similar to something like an AIM-9 and AIM-120, right? So you can do air-to-ground as well. So a pretty interesting vehicle that should be added. Then we need to talk about the J10, of course. The J10A can have upgrades done to it, to the B or C designs, or not to it, right? But we can have another versions out of it with the B and C models. Of course, the C is the most advanced one. Probably we will see the C only, I think, in my opinion. Maybe we'll see the B, but probably the C. The upgrade include, of course, a new engine, domestically built, a new radar, that it's PESA or AESA, depending on the version, an IRST, new weapons. So not only the PL-8B and PL-15, you can actually use the PL-10, for example, and some other missiles. So it can do some real damage in the future. And yeah, it will be basically the same aircraft with a little bit more performance, a little bit better sensors, and a little bit better weapons. Really a 4.5 generation jet from the J10A. Of course, we need to talk about some Russian aircraft that can come there as well. For example, one of them would be the SU-35. They did indeed buy the SU-35. They don't have a lot of numbers out of them. I think it's like 24, but still. This vehicle, of course, I don't even need to say. It's the 4.5, 4++ generation of the SU-27. It includes thrust vectoring engines with a lot more power. It has the PESA radar, the most advanced PESA radar they had at the time. A new cockpit, of course. It can carry the most advanced versions of the R-77, R-27s, and R-74s, together with the older ones as well. Advanced air-to-ground capability, and many, many other things, right? A little bit, tiny little bit of focus on stealth, but not really. It's just like, I think they use, for example, like paint that helps with that, but it's still a large aircraft that doesn't have proper stealth features, so don't expect anything with that. But yeah, so a very interesting vehicle that probably will eventually come to China. I don't know about it too much because apparently Gaijin wants to focus more on Chinese-made versions of these vehicles. So we might not even see it and see like the J16, for example, that we're going to talk about, right? But anyway, it would be interesting. Another Russian vehicle would be the SU30 MKK, right? Or an upgraded model like the MK2, or even, apparently, they might even do a MK3. But basically, this is an advanced version of the older SU30s. It's not as advanced as the SU30 SM, okay? Doesn't have thrust vectoring or anything like that initially, at least on the MKK, right? If I'm not mistaken. Uses the same good old engines, the AL31Fs, right? So it's basically just an older SU20, like SU30, SU27s, right? Of course, like I said, it can be upgraded later, but yeah, it can be added. It would be cool to be added. It would not be as good as maybe the SM2 or the SM of the Russian tech tree, but it's still an interesting vehicle that I think should be added. There are other versions, like, for example, the SU27SK, but just like I said, guys, I think they just want to add more domestic versions of the Chinese, so instead of they adding the SU27SK, which is basically just their own version of the SU27S, right, exported model, in this case, they preferred to actually add the J11, the J11A and B models, right? So I wouldn't see the SU27 SK, but it can be added in the future. Remember, these vehicles, they were basically SU27s built with the parts sometimes, but building Russia with the parts and then mounted on China, stuff like that, right? Talking about flankers, we have 2 domestic designs of the flankers. I don't see any other J11s coming, so the first one would be the J16. This is, I already talked about this. This would be one of the most advanced versions of the, flankers in China. This is a B-placed version, very similar to something like an SU30 SM, but it doesn't have thrust vectoring. It would be very advanced. An electronic scanned array radar, the most modern missiles the Chinese use. There is even an electronic warfare version, so it is a pretty advanced version of the flanker, so it would be very cool to see it. Another one is the J15, which is a navalized flanker, just like the SU33. They used, an SU33 that they acquired from a prototype of the SU33 that they acquired from Ukraine back in the day. And they pretty much just, did an SU33 with their own design, right? So it's supposed to be being used on the carriers that they have, right? It's a pretty interesting vehicle. Nothing like too crazy. It's a little bit less advanced than the J16, right? But it's still as advanced as top tier is right now. So it would be a lot better than the SU33, for example, because it's a little bit more modernized, Fox 3 missiles, stuff like that, right? So it would be very cool to see it. And the last vehicle that I think it's left to be added of the main ones. Like I said, I'm gonna do an honorable mention video, part on the end of the video, but the J20, of course, it was already leaked that it's coming. We don't know when, but it will be coming. This is the 5th generation jet of the Chinese. It doesn't have a gun. That's the weird part about it. The performance is pretty good. It is supposed to be, a little bit more stealthy than, for example, an SU57. So it should be pretty good. Very advanced radar, electronic scanner, of course. The most modern missiles they have on it. It's more of an interceptor than anything else, but still, it can do dogfights and stuff. It just doesn't have a gun, so you gotta live with it, right? So it would be a very interesting vehicle to see. It would wrap it up the vehicles that I see in the soonish kind of future for China, to be honest, with what Gaijin has in mind. But like I said, we do have some honorable mentions to talk about. For example, the J7J, which is basically an upgraded model of the E model. It would have a pulse Doppler radar, better missiles, overall, so a little bit of a higher VR. It is the main, last J7 that we would see in the game, probably, right? Of course, the F-16V, or the Block 70s, right, are being bought by Taiwan, right? So we might see those F-16s in the future as well. It would be cool because, maybe it's more of an exported aircraft, so we might not even see this vehicle in the game unless it is in a non-US kind of situation, right? So it would be cool to see it right here. I don't know how many they got already delivered, or if it's getting delivered still because of 2020 and stuff. Things just got pushed back a little bit, but they are about to get these vehicles. Instead of the F-35, they are getting these. So and the last one would be the J-35, the new stealth aircraft that the Chinese are building, right? It's still in very, very early stages of service. They have around 10, which is considered technically in service, right? So very, very early stages. It would be one of the most advanced aircraft, of course, of the Chinese, probably the most, more advanced than the J20, of course. And you can even have a naval version, so you can have 2 of them being added. I would say that they are trying to be comparable to the F-35. How much it is, I have no idea, classified stuff and etc. But it should be around the same performance, I would assume, right? So very interesting vehicle, of course, and probably one of the last vehicles to be added in this tech tree when it's added. And yeah, basically this is it, guys. So there isn't a lot to be added in these top ranks, but to be honest, there is more than most nations, right? So a lot of Russian vehicles, a lot of Chinese domestic designs or modifications to it, new 5th generation jets getting in. So a pretty interesting tech tree in the future, okay? So I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. And thank you all the members and patrons. And bye, guys. See you.